Hello, you're welcome to a new tutorial series on how to get started with the Calendar API. So we're going to discuss today on how we can use the Calendar API in our applications, how we can use it in many different applications. Probably we want to use it for building apps, for building to integrate inside web or any forms of projects that we want to work with. Calendar API are used across many different industries and business. Some of the applications include applications that are being used in hotels, home rentals, companies, airlines. They use calendar API majorly to show travelers or their customers on how they can book or to show them dates that are available for booking trips and rentals. So it depends on what you want to use it for. So patients also use this calendar API. They are being integrated into applications that can be used for them to know when they are working with their doctors, they can know the dates the doctors is available. So calendar API is being used in different many different projects or many different various ways in the world. So it serves different purpose. So today we're going to get started on how we can use it. So probably let's just do some basic how we can get the events from our calendar. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to console.googledevelop.google.com. Console.cloud.google.com. Okay, so when you want to work with Google applications, probably Gmail, Calendar, this is usually their developer option. So you come to Google's console.cloud.google.com for you to integrate with the API. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to use one of my email to work with this project. So okay, let me click on the email from here. We already open the website. So the first thing we need to do is we ensure like we enable calendar under the library option. Even if you are working with Gmail, you are working with any other third party library, what you're going to do is ensure like you enable it before you start working with it. So we're going to search for calendar. Yeah, you can search under the library option. Okay, you can see welcome to API library. So I'll search for calendar. So I click on it. You can see because I already enabled it. Assume it wasn't enabled, I'm just going to click enable now. So I have it enabled already. So we're going to go back. Okay. The first thing we're going to do is we create our new project. Let's create a new project from here. So let me include my project name. Let's say my lender data. So click on create. You can see it has been created. So let's move to the credentials. So click on create credentials or auth client ID. I'll select it. Okay. So this is where I'm first supposed to go to my OAuth consent screen. I need to indicate if I'm working with internal app or external app. So I'm going to click on available to any test user with a Google account. So you can see it brought out the app information and all, app domain. So we'll move to the scopes and everything. Okay, let's continue. So let me just put my car here. So let me put my email. So the app domain, to protect your users, Google only allow app that uses OAuth to use authorized domain. So for you that has an authorized domain, so you can ensure to click to indicate it. It's not a must, but you can ensure to indicate it. So I'm going to put in my email here. So save and continue. So here is where we are going to add and remove scopes. So when we are talking about scopes in Calendar API, you can use different scopes. So it's actually very important when you're working with the Calendar API, because if your scopes were not indicated or they were not added, there won't be any way for you to work with any of those endpoints in your code. So something like I haven't added scopes like authorization or maybe events in my code, in my during my registration. So I might not be able to authenticate or work with any of those endpoints, probably events. So I will ensure to always add it in my project. So now I'm going to look for what calendar. Okay, let me look for the list of ones available. Okay, I can see it. Okay, it's there. So let's look for another one. Let me check for another one. So now we're going to look for the event scopes. So the event scope is, you can see the alt calendar.events.read only. So I'll need to add one more. Okay, let me check it if it's complete. Okay, I have everything complete. Then click on update. So let's continue. So we save and continue. Now we're going to add our test user. So here I'm going to add my email here. So you add your Gmail, then you save and continue. So it actually depends on what you want to do. You might add other email as the test user. So since I'm going to be testing it from my end, so I added my own Gmail account as a test user. Okay, so we have everything set now. So what we do now is we go back to the credentials tab. So we now click on create credentials, then we click on OAuth client ID. Okay, so here we're going to do something like, let's use either web application. If you're working with web application and you want to integrate calendar inside your code, you can do an Android application, Chrome app, iOS. It depends on different ones you want to do. So the Google Calendar API actually enable people to be able to work based on the various range of application they are trying to build. So here I'm going to click on, let's say, desktop app. So I'm going to be using the credentials over at my code. Okay, so I have it here. So what I'm going to do now next is to download it. Okay, so now that I've downloaded it, so this client secret that I downloaded, which is the credentials that will contain my auth URL, client ID, my client secrets, token URI, and all. So that's what I'm going to be using inside my code. So before we get started with our code, so we ensure like we have it under the folder, like the inside the folder where we're. So here I'm going to take this file under the folder to where I'm going to be working with. So what I'm going to do is let me edit and rename it as client secrets. Okay. Name it client secret.json file. So I'm going to go under my documents, then copy. So where I'm going to be using this application. So I'm going to copy. So I already copied it inside the folder where I'm going to be working with. And one thing we need to know is we must ensure to install the Google API Python clients library, because if we doesn't have it installed in our code, there is no way we can be communicating with the API. So we need to ensure to install this. So just copy the code and then install. I have it installed already, so I'm not going to repeat the process. Okay, after you've installed it, then we are now going to go directly inside our code. So what we're going to do today is we're going to work on how to get events from the calendar API. So we're going to communicate with this API with the client secret that we already have, which is our client ID and client secret. So we're going to use this inside our application to get all the events that is presently on our calendar. So we can also get different things from this calendar API. There's something that they call freebusy endpoint. So the freebusy endpoint is actually very important if you want to know the time, probably your friend or anyone is available. So you can use that to know if they are free, they are busy. So use it to check their calendar to see. So now we're going to get started with our code. So the libraries that we need, they're already imported from here. You can see the Google API client discovery, the OAuth2 credentials. This OAuth2 is actually the one that we use for authorization and for authentication. So and then we can move down, we can see the scopes that we added here. So now is we're going to walk through our code. That is, we're going to get started inside our code. Remove all this. Okay, what we want to do for now is we're going to authenticate, whereby we're going to get the access token and the refresh token. So with the client secret that we downloaded, that is that client JSON file, is going to be used to get the access token and refresh token that we need. So here let's create a function. Function main. Okay. So there are different things we're going to use. Let's say if so we're going to create something like if we have the token.json file, if it's not present, then we're going to use the Google Clients library to use, that is to create a login process whereby we authorize, we get an authorization code, and from there is going to download the token.json file automatically for us. So let's say if os.path exists, then the token.json is going to check if it exists. And we must always ensure, like, we need to rename this client secret as credentials.json, because I'll be using the Google Python library to work with this. credentials from authorized user file. Give the token to JSON and our scopes. You can see like I already define my scopes up there. So here is just to show us like if this part exists, that is if this file exists under our part. So we can just use it, that is we can just use the credentials method then from authorized user file. Then with our scopes, that is we can use it in our application whereby we start getting what we need to use. Since I have my refresh token and access token. So I just needed to call the API that I need to work with, probably the event, freebusy, or any other endpoint that I want to work with. Yes. Okay. What we're actually doing here is to check if our the credentials that we're talking about, if it's valid, is the client, the secret, the JSON file that we have. So what we actually do is we check if it's valid. So it's going to check if it has expired and if the we're going to check for the refresh token also. So we're going to use the refresh token to refresh the credentials. That's what we're trying to do here. Let's create an else function from here. So the flow, so then we use the installed app flow. We have the library up there. In the from kind secret file. So this is where we are going to use the credentials. JSON. So actually this credentials.json, I ensure to rename it as credentials.json. So it might be client secrets and all. So I actually renamed it as credentials.json. Is the same thing with our client secret file. Then we add the scopes. Okay. So what we do here is this is just to tell us like if this particular application, if it has expired, then you can say refresh. So it's just to tell us like we are still able to log in and work with our code. Here let me create right as none. So what we have here under the else option 2 is just to use the credentials then with the scope. So from here we can generate a token, the JSON that we need, which contains the access token and the refresh token. So using this S, we will be able to install and then create a new token.json which has the access token and the refresh token. So I'm going to put the flow.run on local server and use port 0. I'm going to create an empty token.json file. So where is going to save token.json file. This is actually very straightforward and easy. Let's indicate as token. So let's say token.write. You can see from here, that is, you should write this, any results coming from there to JSON. Okay, let's use our if name function. So we can run this automatically. We can also use print anyway. Anyone that suits what we want to do. So let's call our main function from here. Okay, so let's review what we have over here again. This is where we use the part to check if we have the token.json. So if we don't have it, it moved down to the credential, that is, if not this exists or not crease.valid. So this is what is going to check. That is, assuming we have the token.json file available, but the credentials inside it are not valid. So it's going to refresh. That is, you can see refresh. So it's going to refresh what we have there, so we can use it to work with any of the endpoints, probably the event, freebusy, or anyone. So we can see this else. This else is like what we are going to use now. Since we don't have the token.json available, so we're going to use this is what is going to be working in our code. So we're going to use the installed Airflow library, then to generate our own token.json. So we're going to use it with our credentials, then the scope, then we can be able to create a token.json for ourselves. So we're going to run our code now. So you can see it redirects me to the web browser where I'm going to click on my email. So here you can see it's going to verify your application. So based on what I already set under the developer portal, which is the console.cloud.com, so I indicated this email as the developer test. That is, I indicate it as a test user. So indicating it as a test user, my API is going to recognize it immediately. So I'm going to click on continue. So I'll take this because these are the scopes that I set. So it's just to tell you that I want to download any calendar access using Google Calendar. So I click on continue. So you can see the state, the code is going to be here, the authorization code. You can see, so I'm going to close this window. So I'll come over to my code. So now we are going to check if the token.json is now available inside our code. So you can see it has created the token.json for us. So here we have the token, we have the refresh token, we have the token URI, we have the client secret, the scope. You can see the expiry. You can see the expiry as 2021-09. Told us earlier, it's going to, that is this code that we defined here. So it's going to refresh the token that we have. That is, it's going to with the refresh token that we have over there. So now that we already authenticated now, so what we're going to do now is we're going to use our token.json, that is, we're going to use the refresh token, we're going to use all our details, that is to get the event that is on our calendar. So I'm going to do this using the token. I can even continue with this code I have here because we already use this to test different options. So now it's going to check if our token.json exists. So now we have it inside our folder. So one thing I'm going to do here is I need to add more scope to this. You can see the calendar.read, then the events. So it has been included inside our code. So now is we're going to work with the events library. We're going to work with the events library. Is for our code. I think something is wrong. Yeah, let me check. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work with the events library. So we're going to call the build library. It indicates that you're using the calendar API. You put the version there, and then now we're going to use our what the credentials right there. Okay. So these credentials from authorized user file, which is what we brought in for our token.json. So that's what we're going to use. So we already added the build and then the calendar, then we indicated the version. So we're using the build library to call the calendar. So now is we're going to use the events. We use the service that's events. Let's get the lists of events. So let me use calendar ID to be primary. So we actually we can use this calendar to work with different calendars that we have. We might have all different sort of calendars on our email account. So you can see that I have primary. So calendar has ID. You can go under the calendar settings to check the ID of your calendar. So the one I'm going to be using now is primary. So let me indicate single events. Single events. Equal to true. So what else? What else? So and then we need to indicate time. We need to indicate time. The calendar API actually use the UTC time. So we're going to do date time. That's date time. That's UTC now. I'll indicate the format because it's actually in Z. Actually end with actually calculator. Okay. So we already defined the time. So now I'm going to use the time in my code. So let me use the time main is equal to now. Then let's order by order by start time. So let's use the execute command. So what I'm going to do is I want to save this event. Let's say inside an empty list. So I'm going to create an empty list and then I append all the events inside. So let me print all events here. So we have everything set. We already use the build library, then we use the service.event method to call the list of events. Then we added the calendar ID as primary. The time we ensure to use the UTC format. Then we indicate the single event as true. Then we order by the start time. Then we then use the execute command with this with what we actually defined here. So we now append all the events inside this empty list that we created. So let's run our code to get the list of our events. Okay, I think this is supposed to be small letter and the capital letter S. Same for here also. So let's run it again. So now you can see the list of events. So you can see the list of my own events. So these are the events that I created on my calendar. So we can clean all this and create a data for us, which we can pass to our web application to check the behavior of each event that we have per day. Using the freebusy option also, that this is the freebusy endpoint. I can use this to check for, I might not use it for myself, I might use it for any of my colleagues at work, just to check their busy time, if they are free at this particular period and all. So this calendar API is actually very good and is actually makes life easy, and is majorly used in different industries. Just like I mentioned earlier, it's being used in airlines or any other forms of industries whereby they make use of calendar like every day. So thank you for coming to this tutorial, and we'll see you next time.